good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff, and I'm in a different setting. As you can see, we're here in the gymnasium at the United Methodist Children's Home here in Macon. So today we're coming to you live from our Safe at Home Hopefuls meeting. And so we're going to go through a few updates here. What I don't have in front of me in writing, which I normally do, is the housekeeping types of things. And so I know we've got some questions coming. This is going to be informal. You're going to see me move around a little bit. You'll probably see me look behind. We're going to have questions, which are going to be up on the screen here. But first of all, make sure if you're dialing in by audio that you mute your phone. If you're dialing in and joining us via computer, turn your screen off or cover it up with a sticky. Again, we'd love to see you and love you to join us in that way, but we want to make sure that we give you all the privacy we can. I have with me Mary Havoc, who I'm going to talk with in just a minute. Our new interim director, Tom Rollins, is on his way, and I'll be talking with him a little bit. But I'm really excited to be with you here with our Safe at Home Hopefuls group, which are behind me, and I'm going to ask them to make some noise right now. So some of you may not be aware of the Safe at Home Hopefuls group. We've been running that for about 2 years now, especially if you're an OFI. You may not be as familiar with that. But in the Hopefuls group, we have about 75 people. We get together once a month, and we talk about all of the strategies and things that we need to do statewide to help preserve families and to prevent children from coming into care as long as we can do so safely. And so the two, the discourse and the new Hope Exchange, came together on the same day, so we decided to do them both here. So Mary, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And I saw Tom come in the screen. He'll be up in just a minute. But Mary, the reason that I brought you up here was not only to kill some time, which is true, partially, but you're in a new position now, right?
I am.
And so
September 1st.
September 1st. So tell us a little bit about that. What's that position?
So I'm going to be the North District Director, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to serve the North District. I'll be able to continue to work some with Region 5, which I've been the Region 5 Regional Director for the past 7 years, but work with them in Regions 1 through 5. So,
good.
Yeah.
So you've been a Regional Director now for 6 years?
7 years.
7 years. Wow.
7.5, but
one of our most tenured, and I really appreciate your service as a regional director. That's a long time to be a regional director. And so how do you think that position has prepared you to now lead an entire district?
Well, I think that really I've grown the most as a leader while I've been serving as a regional director. I've had the opportunity to serve with several different administrations and see how things can change when we have a new leader, yet the social work doesn't change. And we continue to serve families in the same way, although we're constantly working to do.
So I was saying that I hope that all you out there are joining back to the live Hope Exchange from Safe at Home Hopefuls here at United Methodist Children's Home. We had Mary Havoc up a little earlier talking to her about her new role. And we've got Interim Director Tom Rollins, who, you can come on up, Tom. Well, it's up to you, but he was headed for the T, and now he's headed back with us. Come on up, have a seat.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Good to see you. So I hope you guys can hear us okay. And so today, I was sharing before you walked into the gym that it's really exciting to be able to do this from Safe at Home. We have been doing the discourse and the Hope Exchange for probably 3 years now. It is our way of really reaching all 8,000 staff and giving updates. And when Ginger took over as interim, we wanted to make it a little bit more, more
user-friendly?
Yeah, more, just informal, like a conversation.
Right.
So I like it because we're not behind a table and we can kind of just have a casual conversation.
I can drink my tea.
You can drink your tea. Right. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. And the audience behind us have committed to behaving, and they may have a few questions for us. I've asked for softball questions. So one thing I wanted to do before I got into my conversation with Tom is really just to talk with all 8,000 staff. As you know, I sent out a letter to all of you on August 27th, letting you know of my intent to retire. So after 30-plus years of credible service, the time has come for me to end, at least my work here with the division. And I shared a few thoughts earlier with the group. I began my career in 1989. It's been an amazing career. I started as a case manager in Richmond County. You know, I've done a lot of reflecting over the past couple of months. I've been thinking about retirement for about a year. You know, Mary Beth and I have been talking about that possibility and just trying to think about, you know, what I might do. And I'm at a point now where I believe that I've contributed all that I can with DFACS, and that the challenge for me now is to put myself in a position where I can meet my own objectives, can serve families in some other way outside of the division. I have served just about every single role in this division. You know, I think about the counties that I've worked in. I got my start in Region 7, worked in Richmond, as I said, Jefferson, Wilkes, Elbert, Clark. I was regional director up in northwest Georgia, so all of those counties. The real challenge, I think, for me in my career came in 2013 when Commissioner Reese and Director Scroggie at the time asked me to step up and take on the Director of Field Operations. And so at that time, that position ran everything in the field in OFI and in child welfare. What made it so challenging was our budget. You know, obviously we weren't able to fill positions then, but we got through it. And so I'm just really honored that I've been able to serve, especially the past 5 years. I've served in 3 different positions. So I was the Deputy Director of Child Welfare for just a minute, and then for the past 9 months, Chief of Staff. And so, you know, God has been good to me, and I really appreciate the opportunity. And today, I just wanted to tell everyone goodbye. You'll see me, I'm sure, in some capacity around, but everybody has been asking me, you know, what's the plan? So the plan for now is to take a break, and as many of you know, I've been splitting my time between our home in Washington, Georgia, where I've raised my children, where Mary Beth's parents still live, and then we have a place in Atlanta. We've been doing that for about a year. So I've got some work to do on the home. It was built in 1907, so I've neglected it. It's really old, and I need to do some work there. And then I just need a minute to get my head on straight, and then I will see what the universe has to offer. But I will always serve families and children in some way. Before I finish up, I want to tell everyone, I've gotten so many notes over the past couple of weeks from staff, and they've all meant so much to me. The ones I think that surprised me and meant the most were staff who emailed me that I may not have heard from in 10, 15 years, maybe 20, who said, you know, you may not remember me, but you hired me as that case manager in Elbert, or you hired me in Clark or in Region 1, and thank you for believing in me. And I will say thank you for that, but no thanks is needed, because everyone out there has a light within themselves. Even if you don't see it, you can be powerful, and you just have to get out of your own way sometimes and make it happen. And always choose yourself. You know, one thing that I have done my entire career is I haven't waited on anyone to choose me for anything. I stepped up. I grabbed it on behalf of families and children, and I would tell anyone to do that, because no one of us matters, to be honest with you. And what we do as a team matters, but you've got to step up yourself and choose yourself, and the division has been awesome to me. I can't imagine, I couldn't have imagined 29 years ago that I would be able to serve families in the way that I have, and it's been an honor. And so Tom, congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You and I have known each other for a long time, actually.
Yeah, in a lot of different roles. Were you? I can't remember. Were you in Jefferson County when I was juvenile court judge there, or was that after?
I don't think I was in Jefferson in the mid-'90s.
Oh, that's right. I came along after that.
You came along a little bit after that?
Yeah, we both worked in this field a long time, but
yeah.
Jeff, I just got off the elevator a minute ago, and we're here at the Methodist Children's Home, and up on the 4th floor right now, there's a group of new caseworkers.
Nice.
And I think part of the challenge of everybody here is to make sure that in 48?
Yes.
that those caseworkers are still here and are able to say, you know, somebody here in this audience or somebody out in our video audience took me under their wing, gave me a chance. I stood up to the plate. I did the best I could, and here I am after 30 years.
Yeah.
And of course, you and I, well, you'll still be alive because you're running triathlons. But
Yeah.
I'm not sure I will.
No, I'm sure you will. And so when you were the OCA director, and what year was that?
It was 2007 and 2010 or so.
Yeah. And so I was the county director in Clark for part of that time, and
Yeah.
we interacted some then. And then, but you know what I remember, and I think you had just got back from Guatemala. I was at a road race in Athens, and you were there with your son.
Exactly.
And you recognized me, I recognized you.
Yeah.
We connected then.
Mary Beth was there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was really cool, and so I've sort of tracked your career all this time, and then we've worked especially close since you've been back as OCA director, and you know, and Tom and I have collaborated a lot, and so I don't think it was a surprise to anyone that the governor would choose someone that's so embedded in child welfare in Georgia, and so we're really happy to have you. And so part of what we've done with the Hope Exchange to make it is just to have conversations. And so we've interviewed a lot of our leadership so our staff out in the state can get to know our leadership. So I thought today, being my last discourse, my last Hope Exchange, that I would have the pleasure of interviewing you. And that way our staff can get to know you a little bit better.
That's good.
So let me first say, I think the way you have used video to get messages across the staff has been great. I really, I won't say I watched it this morning on my drive in, but I listened to your Tuesday message this morning, and I thought it was on target. I think the day one message you had was great, and so the use of video, I think, is a great way that you can continue to get that message. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in child welfare and became interested.
So let's start at the very beginning, which I grew up in Sandersville. My family's actually lived in Washington County for eons, both sides. But my daddy was a small-town doctor and never really cared about making money. He always cared about helping people. And so the childhood memories I have are going and sitting in the nurses' station at the emergency room in Washington County Memorial Hospital, and actually sometimes cleaning out wounds in the ER myself. And hearing him come home and talk about the people that he worked with, oftentimes they couldn't afford to pay him, he didn't care. But he always told me and all of my 5 siblings, you've got to do something constructive. You've got to always be humble. You've got to remember that your job is to serve. And so when I went to law school, I got out, and of course they want you to be a lawyer. And quite frankly, I never thought that was all that exciting until I happened to fall into child welfare work and became a juvenile court judge in the Middle Circuit, which is Washington, Candler, Jefferson, Toombs, and Emmanuel counties, and realized that not only could I use my law skills, but I could also work to bring people together to really help children and families in need. And so from that point forward, it was just as if I'd found God's calling for my life, and never expected to be here, but here we are. I've gotten over the years, over the last 20 years almost, to work with a lot of really great people, to learn from a lot of different disciplines. People, when I was a judge, used to think I was a social worker because I kind of wanted to be one a little bit. I really appreciate the ability to go out and engage with families and treat them as the dignified individuals that they are and want to be.
Yeah.
And so it's been really nice work.
Yeah, and I think, especially your last statement, I love that. I always believe that the families we serve deserve the very best service, superior, just like you and I would get if we went to our dentist office or the car dealership where we buy our cars. I think we really have to think that way as we engage families. How long were you a juvenile court judge?
7 years.
Yeah.
So I was appointed in 2000, and then in 2007, Governor Perdue at that time appointed me to be the state child advocate. Yeah. And as you know, I did that for several years, and then I got somewhat of a wild hair. I'd always wanted to go and do work in Latin America. And so I went to work for a Christian mission called International Justice Mission.
Yeah.
Moved the family to Guatemala for 3 years, and it was sort of a combination DA's office and Child Advocacy Center. So we actually worked with the government to prosecute those who sexually abuse children.
Yeah.
But also we treated the children. We did trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy in a third world country.
Yeah, you know, I was going to ask you about your time in Guatemala. I remember thinking when we found out you moved, and especially you moved your entire family, how courageous that was. So I don't think one just lays in bed and goes, hey, honey, you want to move to Guatemala? Let's do it. But what led you to that place in your life?
Well, I think it was a combination of my desire to help, and I read an article in one of the Christian magazines one day about a guy named William Wilberforce, who I think many of folks in this room have heard of, who was the British legislator in the Parliament who really led the drive to banish slavery. And as part of that article, it talked about just how many sex trafficking victims and slaves there were in the world today. And here I found out about this group of essentially lawyers, but also social workers, really a multidisciplinary team that was doing work all over the world to help people who were suffering from either human trafficking, human slavery, child abuse. And I kind of got the itch. It was probably 2008. And I kept talking to them, and I said, well, can I come and help? And they said, well, we can't really have you come for a week and help, but if you'd ever like to work for us, we'll talk to you. And so finally, after really thinking about it a lot, praying about it a lot, I had the opportunity to go to Guatemala with them.
Yeah. I'm just curious, how did you approach your family about this trip and this moving there? I mean, did you say, hey, we're going on vacation, and then like 3 years later?
Carefully. So my wife has always known that she and I have always talked about my desire to do something like this. So It didn't come as a surprise to her. It certainly was stressful, and I think, we think about the stressors in life, and one of those is changing a job, and one of those is moving to a foreign country, and certainly those were big stressors.
And your children were young.
So I had one, I think, was in kindergarten, and one about second grade at that time. They were all happy. My older one was a little less eager, but when we actually went down there, they all learned Spanish. I think they had a really good experience. And they knew it was not going to be forever. It was about a 3-year term, and we were going to come back after that. So, it was hard, but I think it was also very good for them. I think I think we should all make sure that our children understand the value of service and understand the circumstances in which most of the world lives.
Yeah.
So
I think it's awesome. And so I have a desire to move to Switzerland, so I'm just trying to get some insight on how I can talk to my family about that.
Well, first of all, it's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
And it's really civilized, so you shouldn't have any problem getting them to go.
There you go. So you come back from Guatemala, and I know when I was the director of field ops director, like 5 years ago, you were my go-to person on all things like related to the Mexican consulate and that sort of thing. Tell us about your interest in that.
Yeah, so I'd already, like I said, one of my places I've always loved is Latin America. I love the Spanish language. I could never speak it very well until I went to Guatemala, but when I came back, I said I'd really like to be able to continue to work with this population. As you know, we have probably 400,000 persons in Georgia who are a lot of times undocumented immigrants from that area. And so the Mexican consulate in Atlanta has a big program to help its citizens. And so whenever they would have a situation involving a child who perhaps his parents were deported or the child was undocumented and they were involved with defects, I would come in and help out and try to work with the family and with the court to achieve a resolution.
Yeah. And you came back to private practice for a little bit.
Exactly. Doing some consulting. We worked on the cold case project for several years. And of course, just doing small town street law in Sandersville.
How'd that go?
It was actually, it was fun. My mentor, Judge Walter C. McMillan, who died a few years ago, wanted to come out of practice and come practice law with me. So we had a very good time doing a lot of just basic stuff for people in a small town.
Yeah, yeah.
So
then you were led back to OCA, and
right.
you and I had lunch when you first came back down in Jekyll.
Down at Jekyll.
And you talked about how you interviewed for the position, you were interested. So what sparked your re-interest in getting back into this field?
I think the real truth is that I never really wanted to leave this field. I think when I came back from Guatemala, it was a matter of figuring out how best to serve. And of course, doing some work with just private practice.
Yeah.
But I had always been eager in getting back into working with the families that we serve in DFACS, and with vulnerable and poor populations.
Yeah. And you know, how are we doing on time, Ramirez? Doing good? All righty. And so, you know, one thing I've been especially impressed with you over the past year, about 18 months you've been back? Or?
Yeah, that's right.
Is how incredibly supportive you are of our case management staff. And so I think that to me that's come across pretty clear. When you led the statewide conference last year, it was just as clear as can be that you really wanted to focus appreciation on those first responders in our division. Tell us about where that comes from.
Well, I think it goes back again to the lesson I learned as a child, was that I guess it's just a lesson of being a servant. And I think that if you think of it, as you know, in the last few years I've done some international work as well, not only Guatemala but other places. And one of the things I've noticed about child protection and child welfare everywhere we go in the world is that the people who are doing the most difficult work, the hardest work, the ones who go out in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. to check on families, who have to make those really hard calls about whether a family can be safe being together or whether we have to make alternative arrangements. Those folks do as tough a job as any relief worker who goes and works with refugees, or as any police officer who goes and investigates crime and stops crime, or as any fireman who's fighting a fire. But it's always really disappointed me that these frontline workers don't get that kind of recognition that they need. And so if I think back to when I was starting in this business back around 2000, the people that I really admired were those workers who had been there a long time, who had kind of put up with a lot of stuff working in a bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And you have too.
Yeah.
And who had made it through because they had people supporting them and had gained a sort of wisdom about how to work with families. And I think, so it's two issues. It's number one, true admiration for these people and wanting to boost them as being community heroes, like everybody treats firemen and police officers. But it's also recognizing from a practical standpoint that the only way we're going to make this agency the best it can be and to make the best decisions for children and families are to have workers who have been here, supported by us for a long enough time, despite any mistakes that are made, that they have that judgment and discernment and wisdom as to when to know when to believe a family member, or when to investigate further. Because that's really a hard job.
Yeah, it really is. I think you're right. I think there are not very many people like me around who've served their whole adult life in one state agency. And I would say one thing with me has been not just supervisors along the way, but other people who have mentored me. So in 29 years, and I think I told you this, I have seen at least 20 division directors come and go.
Right.
You're the fifth in 5 years for me, you know. And so a lot of staff experience that change. You know, one thing that I tell staff is it really doesn't matter, and it does matter who sits in the division director's seat or the chief of staff. You know, one way it matters is when you have a really great leader who has a vision, who can articulate how we get there, which I'm now seeing, certainly in your beginning of your third week, you're beginning to do that.
Right.
And I think that that's going to be a good thing. At the end of the day, it's the 8,000 staff that are out in the field that make their way through, you know, very difficult times.
It's really interesting, Jeff. I was sitting there, and before I came here this morning, then I had to go to this Chamber of Commerce luncheon, which Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp both spoke. And it got me to thinking about the fact that each of them they have a vision for what they want this division to be, okay? For what they want DFACS to do, for what they want all state government to do. But the truth of the matter is, whether I'm in that position or some other person is in that position under the next governor, it is all of these folks and all of these folks who will be carrying out that vision, who, no matter who the governor is, are going to come to work every day and do the best they can. No matter who the division director is, are going to come to work and do the best they can. And so I think that the role of the division director and the role of all of us who are really blessed to be in a position of leadership is to make sure that we are serving those who serve others.
Yeah. I think you're 100% right. You may have heard me say this. One of my favorite commissioners, Jim Martin, said that there are two positions in this division, those who serve families and those who serve families. I think that's really important. You know, I got my start in 1989 in what now we call our OFI programs, Food Stamps, Medicaid, TANF. Back then it was AFTC. And in the large counties then, you were required to go in OFI, what we called eligibility, before you could go into child welfare. But I'm so grateful of my work in OFI. And as a leader in my county, I was a county director for about 10 years, and I was very interested in those programs. I know that those programs are not something that you're particularly knowledgeable about now. I know you're eager to learn more. So we have about 2,500 OFI staff. What would you say to them around your vision for that, and then how you'll go about learning more about what they do?
So I'm already, like, for example, I was on a call today about Gateway. I know Gateway's probably been a little bit frustrating for people.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to, well, interestingly, I went to a meeting in D.C. last week to try to learn more about the child welfare and OFI. And I'm trying to actually learn some of the acronyms still. So, there's a lot of alphabet soup. But I think what I'm, of course, working with John Anderson and his team a lot to learn more about this. Talked with an OFI worker the other day in Emanuel County, one of my old counties where I was a judge, who was actually attacked by a client, kind of a disgruntled, perhaps a little bit off lady who was very mad about not receiving what she thought were the benefits she was due. I think my approach to learning more about that is not only learning how they handle that job, how we are helping them to do that job efficiently, because people need their benefits properly, accurately, timely. Yeah. But at the same time, done right, OFI is also an opportunity to really engage with those families to say, here's what else you might be able to benefit from. Let's talk about what other programs might help you. And let's talk about how we can help you, how the OFI worker, the OFI frontline person, can be an agent for helping that family move from a position of need to a position of at least partial self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Everybody, the more that we can help people stand on their own 2 feet, that's really good work done. Whether it's child welfare or OFI.
Yeah, and we do it in both programs for sure. And we've got some questions up here, which I think you and I will both handle. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. We've got folks behind us who I know may have a few questions. So I know that your youngest son, what's his name?
Bram.
And he's a guitar player, like a really good guitar player.
Extremely good guitar player.
And so I think
some folks who are listening out there may know Brent Mason, who played on every single country record in the 1990s. So Alan Jackson, he's the guitarist on all those. And Brent's taken Bram under his wing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
and I think that's a great thing. And your older son, who's in Boston?
So I've got, my oldest son has just finished his freshman year at Boston University.
Yeah.
And my middle son is a senior at Grady this year.
Grady.
He went through he went through a little bit of rough patch there, as a lot of teenagers do. Yeah. He's doing real well right now.
Yeah. So I think that's great. When I run in Atlanta, I run right past Grady.
Yeah, it's a great place.
Yeah, big high school too. So I'm a big believer in balance, and so some of the best leaders that I've met and have read about, have some other part of their life that they're passionate about or some other interest. And it could be some fun fact, but how do you bring balance to your life? And so
Well, this is the kind of interesting thing. Honestly, traditionally what I've done is bush hogged my field, but I don't have a field anymore since we moved from Sandersville to Atlanta.
Yeah, if you try to bush hog in Atlanta, you're probably going to jail, so you got to be careful.
Probably so. But I read a lot. I'm kind of like, I'm a kind of a geek by nature. I can spend all day reading and researching stuff.
I think you're a geek too, Bill.
Yeah, I know. It's true. And believe it or not, Jeff, I've actually been trying to run more lately.
Good.
I know that in this kind of job, as I told you the other day, I feel like I've gone from being a 5K jogger at OCA to being training for a marathon here.
And I think that's a good analogy. When Ginger first took the role, Ginger and I were pretty close.
Yeah.
She first took the role. We talked about how physically demanding the job will be, and at OCA you had about 10 staff?
Yeah.
And now you'll be leading 8,000, and that's a bit of a jump. And I think it's completely, you'll be able to do fine, because you pointed out something yesterday. I asked you what was your biggest surprise so far on the job, and that is, quite frankly, you have more help than you thought you would have. And so you're a little like me, I think, and you're really independent. You want to do things yourself. And I think that may be one thing that you'll have to adjust to, because our team will get it done, and I think that the challenge is to step back and just kind of get out of the way.
And trust people to do it well. And not micromanage.
And trust is earned, and so we know that will take time. But I think that's why I asked the balance question, because of that big jump, from what you have been done. And you've not really been you've not been in a lot of roles where you've had some supervision.
I think the most people I've supervised, when I was a judge, I supervised, I brought a lot of people together without a lot of authority over them. In Guatemala, I had a team of about 30, and then at OCA, again, probably a team of at most 15. But fortunately, a lot of the work I've done over the last 20 years has not involved telling people what to do or having actual authority, but it's sort of trying to persuade everybody to come together.
Yeah.
And I think that's really probably a skill that will serve me well here, too.
Yeah, that will definitely serve you well here. And is there a fun fact about you that no one knows that you like for staff to know?
Fun fact about me. Let me think about that, and I'll get back to you before this is over.
So we'll think about that, and I know we're going to go to questions, but this has been an awesome time to talk with you. We'll address the questions. And what I want to tell everyone in the room and out in the state, think about any new position that we've had. It takes time. It really, there's a lot to learn, and when you have, even though Tom has been very involved and supportive of our work from outside of the division, he's new to the division. So I want to ask everyone to not only extend grace, as you learn your role, and because one of the ways you learn is to ask a lot of questions. And so sometimes when we get a lot of questions, we get a little defensive about it. But Tom will need time to ask a lot of questions as he learns this very complex system from the inside. And so let's make sure we give Tom all of our support along the way. As you've heard me say before, we are not successful in our roles unless we're helping others be successful. So their job is to help you be successful in your first year. So I want to ask for everybody to commit to do that.
Well,
so
thank
you.
Do
great. No worries.
I need it.
All righty. So let's see if we can go to the questions. Just so everybody knows out there, the camera is here. You'll see us look here. The questions are on a screen here. So if you see us look back and forth, that's why we're doing that. And so I will try to read these, and we'll see who stumps who. So what's the biggest challenge? Ramirez just hot. Is that the first one? What's the biggest challenge serving as interim director? So what's your biggest challenge so far as you see it? Like week 3?
So as I told you yesterday, part of the biggest challenge is learning how to work with these groups and sort of figuring out who's good at what. That's really a big challenge. Especially having been, I've been the outside critic for all these years, so to speak. I've been able to say, well, y'all should do it this way. And now it's shifted to, okay, well, how are you doing it? What's working? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? But also, in terms of improving things, where's the best place to tweak this? Where's the best place to tweak that?
Yeah.
And of course, also just learning the massive amount of work that we do. There's just a lot to know.
Yeah. And, you know, one thing, you mentioned the word critic, and I have said that about your job, that really OCA is the paid critic.
Right.
You know, which is why I pulled you in so quick on so many things, including preteen. You know, if I could get the critic on board and the skeptic, you know, then I knew we had it. And
we all need skeptics.
We do. I mean, I'm a skeptic.
Yeah.
I'm an inside skeptic, to be honest with you. And I think one beautiful thing is, and my hope for you is you'll now be inside as the leader, and you'll be more enlightened than you've ever been. And not that there were any secrets inside, but one thing you're already noticing is not only do we have 8,000 staff, but we do an enormous amount of work. And so one case gets you on your radar, and as a leader, this will be a challenge, and we've talked about this. Yeah. And then your brain will go to that dark place first, you know, and I think it's going to be a wonderful journey that you can eventually end up sharing with other outside stakeholders about the journey here. So the next question is about State of Hope, and I think it'd be great if you could articulate in a few words your vision around the State of Hope. And I think, obviously, with Director Cagle and myself and Ginger leaving, people are going to go, well, what's happening to the State of Hope? So we've talked about that. Share.
So we've talked about this before, and I think, you know, the question is not, will the State of Hope continue? The question is, well, the answer is yes, but the question is, what does it look like? Okay, so I'm one who I believe in very practical solutions to things. I believe that whenever you have a project or a program, it needs to serve a very good purpose. And now that I've actually had, you know, not just now, but before this, and watching the State of Hope grant process, and of course having a lot more conversations the past week, I think the value of the State of Hope, the value that will continue, is this. Those of you who are on the front line, whether you're doing OFI, whether you're doing child welfare, I think probably like me, not a lot of you folks out there are trained to be managed volunteers, raise funds, start community-based projects. Now, you may be good at that, and if so, we want your input and we want your grant applications for State of Hope. But one of the roles, I believe, of the State of Hope team and the state office in general is that if we can reach out into these communities and help those in the community who want to help our families by creating specific programs, helping them get some funding and technical assistance for those programs, and essentially introducing them to the frontline staff, the supervisors, the county directors, et cetera, they need to know, then what the State of Hope program becomes is our effort to support the front line from the community side. Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of it, and that part is going to continue, and in fact will become more specific and a much more robust program as we go along. Great, great. Yeah, I think anytime, you know, you take a vision and something like the State of Hope, which is a massive thing, and Georgia would be, you know, the very first State of Hope, and break it down into actionable things that can be done in neighborhoods and communities and how it will benefit our staff. I think that's going to be a great thing for sure. So thank you for that. The next question is about the Macon leadership meetings, which you have attended a few times before. The question is, will they continue? Where's Ms. Chambers at today? Still around here? So Beth Chambers is here at the Methodist Children's Home, and of course Allison Evans is the CEO. And Jeff, as long as they continue to provide us fried chicken, we will continue to have those meetings here. All right, very good. And we'll make you vegan one day. So. No. So next question is a big question. Feel free to not answer it or answer it as however you think's appropriate, because I know a lot goes into the Family First Act. So the question is, will we delay the implementation of that? And I know you're still thinking about all the parts for that. Yeah, there's also a follow-up question here. What do we have to do to get ready for it? Yeah. So let's kind of take those hand in hand. So perhaps the win, the real potential for great success, potential for great improvement and reform under the Family First Act is that if we can identify prevention services and prevention staff that we can then use to keep families together, to keep children safe at home.
There you go.
Then we'll be able to use really almost unlimited amount of federal funds for that. So it's 4E. It's not capped. It's not. There's no AFDC income requirements. So we could use those funds if we get those programs up and running. And so that's something we need to do as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Okay. The dilemma is. And of course, then I think some providers, especially some of our smaller congregate care providers, are very concerned, and I think rightfully so, about having enough time to make a change to either provide one of the services under Family First that's allowed for congregate care use, such as ILP, post-18 foster care, or Qualified Residential Treatment Program. But I think we can address those needs even with state dollars. So my question that I've asked a lot of the folks at the state office to help me with, and also providers like the Methodist Children's Home to help me with, is what do we need to do to get our system ready to launch this movement toward prevention services as soon as possible? And I can tell you that a lot of it involves SHINES updates, which are going to cost money and time.
Yeah.
We will find out more in October about what is allowed in terms of prevention programs that are sufficiently supported by evidence to be able to get reimbursement. We need to think more about how we can help those congregate care providers transition. We need to talk to the providers who want to provide prevention services about what they can do and how long they need to get ready and how long they need to be able to launch those programs. And so my question so much is not about delay or not delay. It is we're going to implement this as soon as practical, but we're going to do it in a way that is strategic and that takes into account not only the needs of the agency, but also the needs of the families and children we serve, the budgetary concerns, the data infrastructure concerns, and both the capacities and needs of our provider community.
Yeah, I think that's great. You know, on your first day, we talked about how bringing Family First up in tiers in a thoughtful way would be great for everyone. So I mean, you kind of addressed how do we get ready. So the next question is really from an OFI perspective. It's very early. I'm sure you've not been able to even think about this.
Well, actually, we have.
It's about some resources.
We have made internal DHS budget requests for significant additional OFI staff. And I think and again, as you know, I'm still learning about that part of the work in more detail. I think one of the issues has been balancing how fast we can get Gateway up and running well against balancing the staff needs. And that's a little bit of a tricky balance, but I do think that in longer term that the staff will increase as Gateway becomes more efficient, I guess you might say.
Yeah, you know, Gateway is enormous. We're the first state to ever bring it up the way we did with all of the programs. A lot of states chose to do just Medicaid, but Georgia, like so many other things we do, we were all in. And it still has problems, and I think that I hear from staff every day, you will too, of the things, but largely it's been successful. Largely we're getting millions of dollars of benefits in the hands of families who need it, and I think that at this point we have work to do around the reports. I know that you'll be meeting with Deloitte and talking more with John Anderson about that, and so I know that they appreciate the fact that you're already thinking about them. I have seen amazing work done on the child welfare side of my career. But I have also seen some amazing things in OFI, and so there have been periods in my career and in OFI, the OFI programs where I thought that, you know, we're not going to be able to get it, and OFI staff step up 100% and get it done. Great example of that is timeliness and food stamps, and I've shared with you how important that is, and we're almost at 95%, and that's just phenomenal work. It really is, and so thank you for that. And so the next question really is about a topic that we've talked about here at Safe at Home, and that is about biases. So before I get to that, I see a question. Who will lead Safe at Home Hopefuls meetings? You asked me that question on your very first day. And, you know, what I would say is I hope that anytime there's a transition and change in leadership, that you see other leaders emerge. And so I would depend on this group under the leadership of Keith and Sakima and Lon, the regional directors, and everyone. But honestly, and I know that they will lead it, but the entire group, I think, will step up. And I know you'll participate and be supportive.
Well, I will certainly continue to participate. This is a very important program. This, along with PRE and Push, Push 24.
Yeah.
These are all very critical to our overall plans, which are keep children safe at home when possible. If you can't keep them safe in their homes, keep them close to those homes.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I would also imagine that our district directors, of course, you just interviewed Mary.
Yeah.
Will take a really they'll be kind of in their shop as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic. And though I've been here since the beginning, I like the Safe at Home Hopefuls group. I talked about it this morning. I get really enthusiastic here. I think sometimes that can be scary for the group because I'll jump up and ask a question, and I know that the level of enthusiasm will stay, and I know that you're really supportive of the work that we do with all of everything that rolls under. So, but one topic we've talked a lot about here and challenged ourselves is around biases that we have.
Yeah.
So the next question really is about that. Yeah. You've been involved in our work from the outside, and certainly with OCA, there could have been opportunities for you to begin to form some maybe thoughts and feelings about the work from the outside.
Yeah.
And I think the next question is about, like, in all transparency, what are you bringing to the table that you may have to already be thinking about?
So, there's a lot I bring. Of course, we all have our own biases and prejudices, but let me tell you a couple of positive. Let me tell you one story, okay?
Yeah.
There was a young woman who used to work for me down in Emmanuel County, and she was right out of college. She was a young caseworker, and she literally would get up at all hours of the night and go into homes and knock on doors and track people down. And I was always amazed by the fact that she would do that. And so I think because of that experience as a judge, because of seeing really good caseworkers who are really dedicated and really enthusiastic about this work, I know that with the right leadership and the right support, everybody who works for us, not everybody, but the vast majority of our workers can have that same dedication to service. It is doable.
Yeah.
Because if we can help them to find purpose in their work, to find meaning in their work, and to feel they're supported in their work. Now, are there things that I see that needed to be changed? Sure. I think one of the big things I see from looking at the big picture is that too often between behavioral health, DFACS, the court system, the attorneys, all of the agencies we have to deal with, the Medicaid care management organization, sometimes it's like herding cats.
Yeah.
And I think, so that's, if there's one thing that has frustrated me over the years, it is that feeling that why can't we just all get along on these things? Yeah. And I think that's also one of the challenges I face is really finding concrete ways to treat everyone as a friend, to treat everyone as a potential ally. I think it was C.S. Lewis who said something to the effect of that whenever he got mad at a person who had written something with which he disagreed, he would just vilify that person in his mind. He would think of them as a horrible person. And I think that's sometimes what people on the outside do with our agency. They say, well, those people don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But then when you actually get to meet the people who have different ideas from you or who seem to be an obstacle to you, and you build a relationship with them, you realize that it's just a matter of getting to know each other and building relationships. Yeah. So I think that's
so true. So I'm going to take, and Ramirez, it's okay if we go a couple minutes over, right? We're not being charged by the minute, right? I'm going to take a couple questions from the audience. I want those maybe two brave people to stand up. And before I do that, one last question. Who will you be rooting for this football season?
The Dogs.
The Dogs, okay.
I am a proud UGA Law School graduate. I would say I'd root for the Duke Blue Devils, but that's not until basketball season.
All right, you hang out right here. I'll be back. So we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. I give everybody a warning. So what we have for you? Again, I know what we have for you. What do we have? Yeah, I see you moving. You're not moving towards me, so there might be a question. Mary, yeah, come on, you know here.
Come on, Mary.
Mary doesn't know a lot today.
I know, right? So I have a question for you and for Tom. So I've seen you interview lots of people on the stage, and you always ask the same question, which is, what would you tell your younger self? So I'm going to ask you that, and then ask Tom as well.
Tom, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first, and then you can give the real wisdom.
So I do ask that question, like if you could look back, what would you tell young Thomas?
You were given a great opportunity to get an education. You didn't take advantage of it very well. Should have studied more. I think we all say that. But also, the older you get, the more you realize that life really isn't and shouldn't be about you. Life is really an opportunity to serve other people. And I think I spent a lot of my younger years just, frankly, wasting a lot of time worrying about stuff that didn't matter, as opposed to simply going out and doing something productive for other people.
I think it's a wonderful question. That was a wonderful answer. And I've said before, similarly, that I think life is about two things. It's about learning and helping others, period. And I know for me, Mary, if I could look back and tell the 22-year-old Jeff, it would be to calm down. It's going to be fine. Don't take yourself so darn serious. And life really is fleeting. And so I had something happen to me last year. And so my long-term traveling coach, Steve Todd, was 54, coached 5 years. And he was killed on his bike training out in Denver. And he and I were near good friends. So we connected often. And so one thing I think I learned from him is that life really does go by quick. In fact, he and I talked often about me retiring. He was worried about the move, myself retired. And I know he would be supportive of me. So part of my decision to retire is about that, looking back at the young man, my version of me, that life really does go by quick. The older you get, the faster it goes. Great question, Mary. Thanks for standing up. Do we want to do one more? Kelly? You stand up for real this time. There you go. Kelly, you can on the way up, and then we'll wrap it up. And move a little closer, okay? Thank you for checking me on me. Come a little closer. We want to make sure we close that phone right there. So, Kelly, what's your question?
So, very short question, Jeff. So, I know the reason that you have a beard. I think we all know the reason that you decided to grow your beard. It's like, never until you're 20. Correct. Now that you're retired, are you going to keep the beard or take it off?
And what a relevant question. So I said this yesterday. I'm invited out to Seattle to speak at the ASA conference and co-present with consulting groups out there on capacity and child welfare. So I'm not going to trim or do anything with my beard until then. That's mid-September. I'm going to keep the beard. I won't look like David Letterman, but I think I am going to keep the beard. But I'll be watching the numbers closely, because I did say back, when this first began, that I would shave it if we dropped below 12,000, and then we ended up blowing up to 15. So they don't make the guard that long from a beard. So anyway, thank you. All right, Kelly, it's so good.
I have a question.
Tom has a question. Please step up here.
So, 30 years of doing this business, okay? One of the things I worry about is that, and we've seen this over the years, people leave this institution, they take with them so much knowledge, okay? So much knowledge. When are you going to write a book to tell us how to do this work better?
Yeah. Oh, wow, that's a great question. And it's really kind of relevant because I do dabble in writing. I write, blogs from time to time. And I don't know. I think that there aren't too many people around who've stayed in a system from basically...
And having,
right.
going from the caseworker
right.
all the way to the top.
Right, all the way to the top. And more than that, and many of my team know that I was a food stamp kid, that there were periods in my own life when my family had to be on food stamps. And I don't know, I really have to give that some thought because writing a book really is something that I've thought about. I don't know exactly how that will shape up. And this is the second time you've asked me a question about a book, so I think
that's my challenge to you.
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I look forward to collaborating with you maybe on something like that.
Absolutely.
I think that would be wonderful. So, I think we're out of questions. Again, Tom, thanks so much. I know you're going to do a great job. Team's going to support you.
I appreciate it.
I told you this on day one. I'm here to support you until I leave, and even after that, let's connect for lunch once a month, and I'll be happy to support you and the team in any way we can. So thanks so much. Best of luck. Let's give Tom a hand. All righty. Are we ready to wrap it up? All righty. One last time for me to say goodbye to staff. I want you all to know, and everybody in the room, that I love all of you with all of my heart. I think one hope that I have, if I could leave one legacy for you guys to talk about me when I leave, and that is that never, ever stop pushing yourselves to be your very best. Even if you get out of bed every day and say, I want to be 1% better than I was yesterday, that's a start. Let's keep pushing because families deserve our very best. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll see some of you between now and the time I leave. Thank you for this great audience. This was wonderful. So I hope everybody has a powerful week. We'll see you next time.